I have had fun doing this short, but I hope meaningful special series brought to us by Upward. It's all about reaching your community, reaching your neighborhood. We started it off in the title of the first one, both for the first episode and for the overall series, was don't fight sports leagues, join them. Or I said you may want to do that inversely. Don't fight sports leagues, have them join you. We talked about how Upward Sports can do that. If you want to go back and hear why we're doing this special series with Upwards in the first episode, that's good, but I'll give you just a brief summary. We have ministry partnerships because we choose them. We don't simply go out and get anybody to sponsor or be a part of the Church Answers family. We seek them out. They have to be aligned with us biblically. They have to have the same heart and passion for reaching people. And that doesn't mean a lot of people that we say, or a lot of organizations we say no to are bad. It just simply means that we have different emphases. And there have rarely been any of these ministry partners that have aligned so well as Upward Sports. Because what they have done, what Upward Sports has done, is they have given us themselves as a tool to reach the neighborhood, to reach the community. And it could be the most powerful tool that is out there today, out there being a tool for ministry for churches. Go back and listen to my previous episode if you didn't listen to it, or if you want to go back and just rewind it quickly. They're very brief. And listen to how we talk about how you can use sports and other events and actually assimilate people. If you didn't get that one in the previous one, you just go back to it. Now, I just want to give you some very practical steps as we close out this series with the third of three. And this one is simply entitled, If Your Church is a Neighborhood Church, Act Like It. What do you mean by that? Well, I can remember my mom would say, son, you're a rainer, act like it. I never knew what that meant because there were all kind of rainers. There were some really bad rainers too. And so I took it to be kind of a license to define myself. Probably wasn't the best thing in the world. She probably meant something positive by it, but I never knew exactly what she meant because I knew that she knew that there were a lot of weirdos in our family as well. So I didn't know what it meant to be, if you're a rainer, act like it. I do know how to help you if you want to become a neighborhood church, how to act like it. And I'm just going to give you some steps, very brief, and a resource to go along with them. And with the hopes that you will also connect with Upward, because they're probably the most powerful community ministry that I have seen that can effectively reach people and overcome so many barriers and hurdles. So let's look at this. If your church is a neighborhood church, act like it. Now, before I forget, you need to know this. You need to start now talking to Upward about 2025. Starting a sports league is not something that just happens overnight, but boy, if you start working with them now to start a league, it could be softball, it could be basketball, it could be flag football, it could be a number of sports that they offer. You need to start talking to them now. So line up that appointment, upward.org/churchanswers, and get a good conversation going. You'll probably walk away saying, we're going to do this in our church in 2025. So what are some steps to start acting like you're a neighborhood church? Now, that's assuming that you are a church in the neighborhood. We can broadly define neighborhood. It could even mean some broader rural areas, but you know what I'm talking about when I say neighborhood. So what does it mean to act like it? Well, the first thing is you got to know your community. You say, well, duh. Yeah, you can't reach your community unless you know your community. And yet I talk with pastors every single week who think they know their community, and they don't know their community until they find out about their community. They get our report called Know Your Community. It's an powerful demographic psychographic report. It's powered by this database called Esri, which is the best in class, updated regularly. And they get this 35-page report with good summary data, and this is your neighborhood. Did you know that? I've seen eyes go wide open with pastors and other church leaders when they begin to learn who is in their neighborhood. We have an auxiliary report with it, a separate one, which is the Know Your Community political report, We're in tumultuous times politically. Even as I'm recording this, it's in the almost the peak height of a heat, probably, of a presidential election. And I was listening to Sam Rayner talk recently about how he did the Know Your Community political report for his area in Bradenton, Florida, and he was surprised. He thought that it would be red politically, more Republican than Democrat, because he saw more of those signs, but particularly because the state it was getting more and more conservative. And so he was surprised to find out that his neighborhood was purple, that there were almost as many on one political side as the other. So those are two reports we have, the General Know Your Community report and the Know Your Community politics. Either of those you can get, and they're really some good reports to help you know it. So the first thing you do, you got to start off by knowing your community. Now, the second thing you need to do is you need to learn what a neighborhood church is. Now, I'm not going to take a short podcast and go through all of the characteristics of a good neighborhood church, but I am going to point you to Sam Rayner's book, The Surprising Return of the Neighborhood Church, and I love the subtitle, Discover How Your Church is Primed to Reach Your Neighbors. Look, many of our churches don't reach anybody right around them. When I became pastor of a church in St. Petersburg, Florida, we had very few people who were in our immediate community. The community was somewhat gentrifying. It was changing to a higher income with some of the older homes. It was somewhat gentrifying, but then somewhat not. And one of the great fun things that I saw in that church in the brief time I was there is it really began to reflect our community, and we really began to have people from around our church attend our church. I could go into that story. It's a separate story into itself. But I would say develop strategies to become a neighborhood church. Now, Tom, what do you mean by that? Again, that is too much information for a short podcast, but you can do it by using the report you got to develop a strategy, but you can amplify it by getting that book and paying just whatever the small price is for The Surprising Return of the Neighborhood Church, and you will have all kinds of strategies to reach your neighborhood. So, step number one, you got to know your community. You got to learn your community. Step number two, you have to have a strategy to reach your community. That could come directly from the Know Your Community report, but it definitely will come from Sam's book, The Surprising Return of the Neighborhood Church. Third, you have to have the right resources to reach your community. Now, right resources, of course, could be the Know Your Community report, but the Know Your Community report by itself doesn't reach the community. It points you to how to reach your community. Once you know how, then you can start the process of providing resources to reach the community. One that we offer is called the Good News Neighbors Toolkit. It's basically built around being a good neighbor and giving gifts to people in your neighborhood that are fun gifts at an appropriate time. It's something that is a low bar. It just isn't much of a hurdle for your church members to be a part of it. And so you can look in the show notes, because that's a resource that Church Answers offers called the Good News Neighbors Toolkit, and you can find out all about it when you begin to say, what kind of strategy are we going to do? And then, of course, you've heard me mention Upward again and again and again, because this is the Upward special series. And even though it's about the whole thing about don't fight sports leagues, join them, and inversely, don't fight sports leagues, have them join you, we've taken many different tactical paths. This last one, get a sports league in your church. Simple as that. In fact, now when someone comes to me and says, if I could do one thing to reach my neighborhood, what would it be? I'd say, call Upward. Write Upward. Upward.org/Church Answers. You can go to that website and they'll tell you everything you need to do. You need to start now to do something in 2025. You need to set up that appointment with them. They will talk to you. They'll do a no-commit type overview. But man, once you start it, you know, one thing I've noticed with Upward churches, if you will, I rarely see a church that starts a sports league that says, we've had enough of it. They just continue. Sometimes it stays at its current level. Sometimes it grows. But it is highly effective, and you can see it by the number of churches that participate in it. So, in this Upward Special Series, again, we had the kind of funny title, if you don't like sports leagues, don't fight them, join them. But we've talked about several things. And if you missed them, go back and listen to them. Each of them had a unique type of focus. But for this one, the focus is very basic. You got to know your community. And we'll give you the link to the Know Your Community report and a second report called the Know Your Community political report. Secondly, you have to develop a strategy to reach your community. And we'll give you a link to Sam's book, The Surprising Return to the Neighborhood Church. Third, you have to have the tools to reach your community. Not just a strategy, but the tools. We talked about two. One was the Good News Neighbor Toolkit, really a low bar just to get a lot of people involved, but the one that is more effective, most effective, let me just put it that way, is having an Upward Sports League. And we just encourage you to contact them at upward.org/churchanswers. So what I am encouraged about is not the fact that we have a sponsor. I'm encouraged by the fact that I believe in their ministry. I believe in what they do. Why? Because I'm seeing it happen in churches. I cannot tell you how many churches I've gone to, and most of them had Upward before I even talked about Upward. Before Church Answers became a partner, I said, yeah, I hear you're partnering with Upward. Let me tell you what they have done. So I got kind of a history, but now we're beginning to hear more and more churches that are taking our counsel, and they're going and starting a sports league in their church as well. Hey, you don't have to have a gym. You don't even have to have a field. Maybe you could even do it in a parking lot. But they, Upward, will help you get started. And it'll be one of the best evangelistic outreach efforts, emphases that your church has ever known. I encourage you to go back and listen to all three parts of this series and just learn about how you can become that effective community church, that effective neighborhood church. And above all, reach people with the gospel of Christ and see them assimilated into becoming fruit-bearing disciples in the local church. It's been a fun series. Thank you for tuning in at YouTube. Hey, if you're watching us, give us a rating, thumbs up, subscribe to us, and maybe give us a good review as well. That's all we ask. And if you listen to us on the podcast or you're podcasting out, give us a rating and review there as well. Thank you, loyal listeners. We appreciate you so much. We'll continue to provide you the type of content that makes a difference for your church, that makes a difference for your community, that makes a difference for the kingdom. See you later.